Hello, good morning. Today, our guest is Dr. Daniel Nzereogu, and we'll be talking about diplomatic relations in pre-colonial Africa. So,
Yeah.
Daniel, you have written
Mm.
some pieces on diplomacy in pre-colonial Africa, and these pieces often feature pre-colonial Igbo societies. So, Daniel,
Yes.
before we delve into the meat of your research, please tell us who are the Igbo people?
Yeah. Igbo people are the ethnic group or the tribe in present day Nigeria, in the southeastern part of Nigeria. They are predominantly located in the southeastern part of Nigeria. Uh, there are also other Igbos that are minorities in southern part of Nigeria. In the southeastern part of Nigeria is made up of 5 states: the Igbo State, Anambra State, Enugu State, Abia State, and Ebonyi State. These are where the Igbos are predominantly located in Nigeria. Then there are minorities in south part of Nigeria. In rivers, in Delta, you have them as minority. So the Igbos are, are the ethnic group or the tribe that are predominantly located in the southeastern part of Nigeria.
And who are the Nnewi?
Nnewi, Nnewi is a city in Anambra State. Like when I mentioned the 5 states where the Igbos are predominantly located in Nigeria, I mentioned Anambra State. So Nnewi is a city, is one of the prominent cities in Anambra State. They are popularly known for trade and business. So most of the product a good number of the productions that are happening in Nigeria could be traceable to Nnewi. For example, today Nigeria boasts of producing vehicle, the innocent vehicle manufacturing. Yeah, it's actually domiciled, that production factory is domiciled in Nnewi, and it is actually owned by an Nnewi person. Innocent Chukuma is his name. So Nnewi is a city in Anambra State, Nigeria, and is popularly known for business, trade and business. And in the recent time, they have delved into manufacturing. So right from the pre-colonial times, Nnewi has been prominent in agriculture, but as the colonial era came, and towards the end of the colonial era, they evolved from an agricultural, community into a trading community. And presently, Nnewi is has evolved again into a manufacturing, city. So it's one of the industrial hubs that we have in Nigeria today.
Daniel, did the Igbos practice diplomacy during the pre-colonial era?
Yes, they did. They did, and that is actually the the heart, the centerpiece of my research on the diplomatic practices in pre-colonial Igbo land. It's centered on the argument that the pre-colonial Igbo societies practiced diplomacy, irrespective, regardless of the fact that it's been believed that due to the fragmented or decentralized system of government, in pre-colonial Igbo society, it is believed that they didn't have the capacity or the facilities or the capacity to facilitate diplomatic practices. But that is not the truth. The fact is that in as much as Igbo society was a fragmented society where the states, they didn't have a centralized state system. It was decentralized, but they still had their ways, through which they practice diplomacy, because Diplomacy is actually, the instrument through which relations is fostered. Igboland was not an island in the pre-colonial times. Igboland interacted with themselves, and they also interacted with other groups, outside Igboland. And it was through the instrument of diplomacy that such relations was facilitated, in the pre-colonial times.
Daniel, what were some of the
Yeah.
items that were traded?
Items that were traded.
Yes.
Okay. Now, trade is actually one of the modes or channels through which diplomacy was practiced, in pre-colonial Igbo society. There are other channels too, but trade was prominent, and this is because, no community is an island on its own. Every community needed the other community to survive, and most times, what one community produces may not, due to ecological differences. One community could be producing one product which is not very well much produced in another community, and so what you lack in production, you augment by trading with other community who produces such products. And so, for example, in the northern part of Igbo land, which includes places like Enugu, Nsukka, those areas, they don't have much water. Water bodies are not much in those areas, and so, um, commodities like fish, and seafoods are not so much, produced in those areas. But those areas are well endowed when it comes to some mineral resources like iron ore. You know, it's well produced in northern part of Igbo land. So you discover that they now traded these commodities with other commodities they did not have. For example, the seafoods are produced very much well in southern part of Igbo land, places like Onitsha, places like Owerri. Those areas have, water bodies. So seafoods are produced in this area, which was now traded, with stuffs like iron ore. And again, Igbo people interacted and traded with communities that are outside Igbo land. For example, the Gala people, you know, in the pre-colonial times there were horses in Igbo land, but they were not they are not items that are associated with Igbo people. Igbo people originally don't have horses, but as time went on, horses were seen in Igbo land, and the reason was because of trade. Trade. They traded with communities that are outside Igbo land, that are not in northern part of Nigeria, present day Nigeria. So, and that was how horses, came into Igbo land. Igbo land is prominent with the production of palm fruits. It is through palm fruits that you have palm oil, palm kernel. So this is one commodity that Igbo people produced in large quantity, and this is one commodity through which they exchanged, for other communities that were not prominently produced in Igbo land. So one commodity that is well produced in Igbo land is the palm produce, which include palm oil, palm kernel, and the rest of it.
Daniel, I also read that horses, beads, and bronze were a part of the
Yeah.
exchange and they primarily emerged from the north. But there is a
Yes.
statement in your article that's quite shocking in the sense that I was unaware that the Igbos were engaged in a slave trade during the 19th century. No, I am familiar that there was indigenous slavery in Africa and the Igbos participated in the slave trade, but I did not know that it was so old, that the Igbos, that their participation was so ancient. Afigbo 1981 further stated that the Igbo Boku, the Igbo Kwu finds Finds dated back to the 9th century suggests that by that date, Igboland was already engaged in the exchange of slaves and ivory for horses, beads, and bronze coming from the north. I didn't know that their involvement in slavery was so ancient.
Yes, Igbo people were involved in slave trading. It was quite ancient. You know, the well documented history on slave trading in Africa is the transatlantic slave trade, of which different African communities participated in, including the Igbo. And that transatlantic slave trade, you know, commenced from the 15th century. That was when it became, big business. 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th century. It started from the 15th century and was at its height in the 16th, 17th, 18th century. By the 18th tail end of the 18th century, it was already the abolishment into the 19th century. The abolishment has started, which was spearheaded by the British government. So, but the point I'm trying to make is that even before the transatlantic slave trading had commenced in most part. It has been is a normal practice in most part of African communities. But the transatlantic slave trade started between the 15th and the 16th century. So, but the issue was that the quantity of slaves that were, the number of slaves that were sold before, the transatlantic slave trade were not as much. Slaves were sold to North Africa, to Middle East, long before the transatlantic slave trade began. Slaves were sold from different parts of Africa, including Igboland, to different other parts of Africa and to other parts of the world like Asia, and the rest. So, but the number was quite few compared to the volume that was sold during the transatlantic slave trade. So the slave trade in Igboland was quite ancient. And even after the abolishment in the early 19th century, slave trade still continued, in Igboland and some other parts, of Africa. It still continued, So it continued in trickles. Even slave trading, even till today, has not ended. It's in different shades and forms, even till today. So slave trading has been has been going on long before. It's quite ancient, long before the transatlantic slave trade. So, and Igbo people have been involved in it, and slave was a fundamental aspect of trading item goods. Let me pardon me for using the word goods, but slaves was actually part of the goods that were sold, during the pre-colonial times in Igboland and in other parts of Africa. So slave trade in Igboland is quite ancient.
I know that slavery still exists in some parts of the world, like Libya. The illegal
Yes.
slave trades are still enforced by unscrupulous actors, but in modern day Nigeria, is slavery still practiced? Because I watched a Nollywood movie and it's fiction, but
Yeah.
usually movies reflect society. And this movie was filmed
Yes.
around 2000 or the late 90s. And in the
Mm,
movie, Pete Edochie was the star. He lived in the city. He was an affluent man, but his helper was not
mm,
referred to as a houseboy. They referred to him as a slave.
mm.
And
Yeah.
this film was just around the late 1990s or the early 21st century, 2000, 2002, some
Yeah.
sometime around then. And I was shocked that they were referring to an employee as a slave.
Yes. The fact is that slave trading is illegal, and nobody can come out in the open in present day Nigeria and deal on slave and or refer to anyone as slave. But the truth, the fact is that slavery is still ongoing. It may not come under the name slavery or slave trading. For example, you know, sex workers that were, shipped, that were that were recruited, by some individuals, like the one you mentioned, through Libya. Most of the times, their destination is Europe, places like Italy. Is still going on. Yeah, and it's not only for sex trafficking. It's also, there is something that is going on now. Organ harvesting. I don't know whether you've heard of it.
Yes, yes, I have.
Yeah, organ harvesting. So this is for different purposes. For different purposes. Maybe they sell them to collect their organs, to sell. So it's still going on. I know kidnapping is rampant, and is in the increase these days. Sometimes and harvesting. So it's that slave trading is. So it may not be done in the way it was done in ancient times, but in modern times it's still going on, but in different shapes and forms, like the one I mentioned, for sex trafficking, for organ harvesting, and for other purposes. So it's still on, but it's an illegal business, and so it's not done in the open.
Yeah, all right. So we're going to go back to diplomacy. Daniel,
Yeah.
tell us about the Igbandu.
About what?
The Igbandu. What was the Igbandu? You write covenant, blood pact. Tell us about that.
Okay okay the is actually a practice in Igboland, you know to I think what brought it into diplomacy is, in diplomacy, pacts, negotiations are signed, you know. So Ibando, which is Igbo word for Igbo term for covenant, is a way when, during the process of negotiation, when an agreement is reached, it is sealed by Ibando, it is sealed with covenant, to make it binding on the parties that are involved in the agreement. So, like, that's why I say there's no way anyone could say that diplomacy was not practiced in pre-colonial Igbo land, because there have been conflicts. One of the things that leads to that, in one of the channels, in one of my papers, I wrote on war as a channel for diplomacy. Just as I wrote on trade as a channel for diplomacy, war is also another channel for diplomacy. And people don't fight forever. A time will come when they get fed up with their fighting, and they would like to negotiate and resolve their differences. And that is where diplomacy comes in. So by the time they are done with negotiation, and the agreement is reached, that's where Ibando comes in. They kind of, do a covenant to make it binding. To make the agreement binding on the parties involved, in the agreement. So, and Ibando, it's done in certain ways, through which, in certain ways, in which, you know, contemporary people may regard as fetish, But in those days, it was just normal practice. It wasn't anything fetish, It could involve, blood, the cutting of body,
Let me read
and
it. Let me read what you wrote. Under
okay.
this agreement, the leading representatives of the clans or village groups concerned met at their common boundary, and after performing the prescribed ritual, drew blood from their veins and mixed it in a container. Then they would dip pieces of
Yes.
kola nut in the blood
Kola
and
nut,
eat.
yes.
This ceremony
Mhm.
was believed to constitute the groups concerned into a blood union whose members were bound to treat each other as clansmen.
Yes. So that is it. You know, in that kind of situation now, the people that enter into that union, that agreement or that covenant, they can't fight each other no matter what happens. They can't go to war to each other because of that Igboland, that covenant they have entered into. So, and it doesn't just happen, it comes after much, discussion, negotiation, and that is where diplomacy comes in. You know, after negotiation, after, agreement, conversation, they come to agreement, and that ritual is performed. And after that ritual, it's binding. Nobody can go contrary to the tenets of that agreement. So, and that is how powerful it is. Those two communities cannot, no matter what happens, they cannot go to war with each other. So that is it.
Daniel, how did marriage
Yeah,
enable trade and diplomacy? Because you also comment on the institution of marriage in propelling diplomatic relations. You say,
very well,
and
very
yes,
well.
this is what you write.
Yeah.
According to Afigbo, most long distance traders and travelers were polygamists and usually took care to choose their wives from important and strategically placed towns along their normal route of business. So expound.
Yeah, marriage, like I mentioned, there are various channels of diplomacy in pre-colonial Igboland, and marriage is one of them. I mentioned trade, I mentioned war. Marriage is there, religion is also there. So marriage, marriage, marriage is one of the effective ways of encouraging or ensuring cooperation among communities. you know like I mentioned, wealthy people, one of the reasons why they married many wives in those days, in those ancient times, is to establish relations with the different communities from where they married. Then ensure to marry. And most times, if they have any business interest in a particular community, it becomes necessary they marry from that place, to solidify the business relation. So they marry not necessarily because of love, but because of business, to help solidify, their business interests. By marrying, the relation has gone, they have taken it deeper, because they believe that marriage is a deeper relationship than ordinary trade relations. If I have trade relations with anyone, I can, depending on the tenets of the agreement, I can wake up one morning and break up the agreement, the trade relations. But they believe that if they take it further to marriage, they see marriage as a serious and as a deeper relations. So marriage will help solidify and make their trade relations stronger and more permanent. So that is the idea behind using marriage as a business strategy and a diplomatic channel. So they believe that marriage unites people. Marriage helps to bring people together and makes relations stronger and deeper. So once they believe that once marriage is introduced, it helps diplomatic relations, to move seamlessly and with less friction. And even when there is friction, they have a stronger reason why they should resolve any conflict that arises in the process. Yeah, but if there is no marriage, it becomes more difficult. It takes longer time because they don't have a skin in it. They don't have something that is of strong, strong effect on them. They believe marriage is a strong thing, and once it's introduced in anything, it makes that issue stronger, deeper, and more permanent and long lasting. So that is the idea behind introducing marriage in both business and in diplomatic practices. So marriage serves as a diplomatic channel.
Would you characterize family homes as an example of a consulate or an embassy?
Family, as in homes, families.
Yeah, you said their father-in-law's house provided hostel and
Yes,
warehouse facilities. Tell us about this.
yes. It served. That's why I say, even though pre-colonial diplomacy in Igbo land, it wasn't as advanced as a modern diplomacy. There were similarities. They share similarities, and this is one of the similarities. You know, families, homes now serve as consulates or embassies in those days. You know, is like a place, where in a strange land, in a foreign land, is a place where you see as home. You understand? Is a place you see as home, because in that place it's like another family, another of your family in a strange, in a foreign land. Is a foreign land, but in that place you are home. So that's in the home of your in-laws, is home to you. So it now serves as embassy in a foreign land. So that is it. The home of your in-laws in a foreign land becomes an embassy. It becomes home to you. So that is it.
Daniel, I often see the phrase market days when I'm doing research when
Yes.
I'm doing research pertaining to African countries, especially Nigeria and the Igbos. What's a market
Yeah.
day? Why were market days important? What do they symbolize?
Now, market days in Igboland, they have they have four main market days. Now, on these days, people people gather at the market square to trade. Trading trading. That market days is a day, is a special day. Whatever commodity or goods you have is brought out on at the market square, where people from the community, from that village, or from neighboring towns, neighboring villages, they gather in that place, to trade. They come with their own goods, they buy what the community have to sell, and they also sell their own commodities, to the people of that village on that market day. The reason why market days are important and strategic is because of the 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 opportunity it gives to foster relations. On an ordinary day, and on an ordinary day, people may not come. People from other communities may not come to that village, for trading. And even when they come, they cannot see a large cluster of traders in one place. If they come, they could, it's either they are trading on individual level, trading, person to person, you know. But on a market day, that day, the market square, every trader comes to the market square. They come to a market square and trade, different kinds of trade. People, whatever you have, it's like a trade fair. On that day, people gather, at the market square, both from within the village and from neighboring towns, neighboring villages, they come. So each village have their own market day. The four, I said that we have four main market days in Igbo land. They are called the Eke, the Afo, the Eke, the Orie, the Afo, and Nkwo. These are the four market days. So each village have their own market day. There are some villages, their own market day is Eke. Some villages like Nnewi, their market day is Nkwo. So on Nkwo day, Nnewi people gather at the Nkwo market, at the Nkwo market, which is the market square. They gather there, and people from other communities also come there to trade with them. So when it is time for another community, let's say Nnobi is a neighboring town to Nnewi. So Nnobi, their own market day is Afo. So on Afo market day, Nnewi people, Oketiti people, all of them, they gather at Nnobi. So, and you see, it now serves, this is how one of the ways through which trade serves as a diplomatic channel. It helps to engender and encourage the relations relations between communities, between villages in pre-colonial times. So as people come to trade with one another, they enter into agreements. They get themselves involved in negotiations, and it fosters. This is how it fosters, relations, between communities and between people from different communities. So that is the significance of market days. Market days is quite significant because it is on that day that people from different communities have the opportunity to interact and mingle and relate with other communities, through trade. There could be other ways through which they relate, but market days, is quite significant because it is the day. It provides opportunity for communities to relate with one another through trade. So, and the community, they don't joke with their market days. In Igbo community, especially in those days, in contemporary times, in modern times, market days are not as significant as they used to be, even though they are up to now. They are, so there are still shades of that, significance even up to now. But trading can happen on any other day, in contemporary times. But in those days, trading, major trading activities are done on market days, and it is like a trade fair where people come from different places, like now in Nnewi, people can come as far as from Onitsha, to come and trade in Nnewi. Onitsha is another city, in Anambra State, which is quite a distance from Nnewi. So, but in those days, it's actually a long distance. With the help of technology and the means of transportation, it's people can travel easily. But in those days, it's actually a long distance for somebody to come from Onitsha to Nnewi to trade. Is actually a long distance. So, and this is what market days. This is the significance of market days. It brings people together. It brings people from different villages and communities. It brings them together, and it's on that day that trade relations are fostered.
All right, great. So, Dr. Daniel Nzereogu, we're going to wrap up. So, I am going to thank you for coming on the show to be such an awesome guest. It was a pleasure speaking to you. And are you Igbo?
Thank you. Yes, I'm Igbo. I'm from
Okay.
Imo State,
All right,
and
great.
I live in Anambra.
Okay, all right, great. Bye.
All right, bye. You are Lipton Matthews, right?
Yes,
Okay, so where are you located? Where are you?
Jamaica, Jamaica.
Okay, Jamaica. Okay, okay, that's nice. So, are you affiliated to any university?
No,
Any?
well, I write for the Mises Institute. The Mises Institute is a research organization in America.
Okay, okay, but you are domiciled in Jamaica.
Jamaica, yes.
Okay, okay, okay. It's all right. I'm Dr. Daniel Nzereogu, Daniel Chukuma Nzereogu. I am in Nigeria. I'm a lecturer in Nnamdi Azikiwe University, Oka, Anambra State.
All right,
You
great.
know, yeah. So my research interest is in diplomacy and economic history.
All right. And I guess
Yeah.
so do you write frequently about the Arrow people?
Arrow,
Yeah, the
the
Arrow
Arrow
Igbo.
people.
Yes.
Yeah, yes, I write. I write. My PhD dissertation is also in Nnewi. It has to do with Nnewi, economic history of Nnewi.
Okay.
And I mentioned the Arrow because they played a key role. Arrow people are itinerary traders, like the itinerant traders. So they move from places to places. Arab people are seen in different parts of Igboland because of the nature of their trading activities in pre-colonial times. So there is hardly any Igbo community where you go, you will not see an Arab person.
All right.
So that is it for Arab people.
All right. Thanks again. Bye.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Bye.